Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, or whatever time of the day it is, whenever you're listening to this. This is the SilmFilm Project podcast. This is Trish Lambert, not Dave Kale, who is once more, and I believe we should not be surprised, in a Wally sickness situation. This too
Yes,
shall pass. Day will come again.
that's right. Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Dave has only begun the long life he has of getting sick with contagions that his child brings home to him. So, yeah. Well,
he implied in his message that he might be here, but I'm not holding my breath. So, and
yes.
as you heard, we're here with this is Trish Lambert, and I'm here with Corey Olson, the Tolkien professor. And we also have, because we're going over scripts, we have Marie Prosser and Nick Palazzo with us. Yay, representatives from our script team. So what are we doing
Absolutely.
today? How far have we gotten, guys?
Well, we got up through episode 8, all the way to 8. So we're going to. So today we're going to move serenely through episodes 9 through 12. We're just going to do the whole last 5 episodes. So that's the entire plan. I'm going to start off that plan by having relatively. Did I say 12? Hakan, 13. I meant 13. 9 through 13. I'm gonna start off that plan by having a very efficient set of announcements today. Only a couple things that I wanted to emphasize. One is our summer camps. So it's just about summer camp season. Signum has put together. We did our Hobbit camp last year. As you'll remember, we have 4 camps that we're doing this year. We've expanded our program, so we're doing free summer camps. These are targeted for like middle school age kids, so kids age anywhere from like 9 to 15 range, basically. And we have 1 camp on The Hobbit, 1 camp on The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, 1 camp on Harry Potter and the Sorcerer/Philosopher's Stone, and 1 on A Wrinkle in Time. So 4 awesome camps that are happening at different points in the summer. They are all completely free to participate in. And we're doing them as a hybrid experience with local groups and with local homeschool groups, and of course with local public libraries. So we would strongly encourage you to get in touch with your local library and tell them about this awesome program, which is totally free for them to participate in, and they can host a really awesome and interactive reading program for kids this summer, which we will help them with, and we've already done all the work for it and everything, and all they have to do is to provide a place for kids to come and talk about awesome books and do really fun activities. So, and now if you want to participate on your own, like just in your own family, you can totally do that too. That's totally fine. But anyway, lots of information there on the signumuniversity.org/academy page on our summer camps. I encourage you to go look at that. Go talk to your libraries. Email us if you have any questions, camp@signumu.org. We'll get through to us, and we'll be able to answer any questions you have about our really fun summer camp program. The more the merrier. We want to get as many kids involved as possible. Our goal is just to share our enthusiasm and excitement for these awesome works of literature with the next generation. So that's it. That's what we're doing, and it's really fun. So Hobbit Camp was so great last year, and I'm really looking forward to seeing that program expand this year. Our next regional moot, which is coming up August 18th in Oakland, California, Bay Moot for Northern California there. And I encourage you, if you go to signumuniversity.org to our events page there, you can see there's a page for Bay Moot, including the registration link and, importantly, the call for papers. So if you think about maybe wanting to do a presentation at Bay Moot, you totally can do that. And the link for that is there on that page as well. For SilmFilm related planning purposes, we are coming now to the end. Of course, we've been coming to the end of season 3 here for some time. We are already in the post-production phase where we are now doing our script reviews. The next stage after this is we're going to be looking at the creative work that people have been doing in various media and on various subjects for season 3. But one sort of larger ongoing process, as you probably know, we do a really fun crowdsourcing of casting our actors and actresses for all of the different roles of season 3. Of course, many of the major roles of season 3 have already been cast from season 2 and are continuing onwards, but we do have a list of new folks who need to be cast. And so we're taking nominations for those currently. If you go to our discussion board, which is just signumuniversity.org/forums, forums.signumuniversity.org, sorry. And you go to the SilmFilm one and season 3 and casting, you'll see you can follow the thread there to our nominations forum, where you can nominate different people. You need to. So, Marie, can you explain again, what do people need to do in order to nominate somebody?
They need to have the name and the photo of the actor and a link to the IMDb page, preferably also an age and a height, and a brief description of why they think this actor would be appropriate for that role.
Yeah.
So something persuasive.
Right, exactly. Yeah, it's funny how important height has been in our discussions. I mean, because it's a big deal. Tolkien makes a big deal of people's heights, and so there are some people who just would be. I mean, I know that, there certainly have been some productions that have succeeded despite highly unlikely height casting. I think in particular of, what was the name of that? I'm forgetting his name now already. The guy who was cast as Henry VIII in The Tudors.
Oh, yeah, I don't remember his name.
Yeah.
Oh,
I can see him in my mind's eye, but...
Yeah. Well, anyway,
Did you tell me, wasn't he too short?
He was tiny. Yeah, Henry VIII was enormous. Like, big, not only when he got fat later in his life, but I mean, he towered over everybody. He was, he was over 6 feet tall, which was very unusual for the, kind of nutrition they had in the 16th century. And he was broad and burly, and they cast this, Jonathan Rhys-Meyers. That's it. Thanks, Zach.
That's it.
Yeah. So, I mean, and he's like shorter than everybody. I mean, he's like looking up at his courtiers. He's looking up at every other monarch that he meets with. He's looking up at his wives. I mean, he's just tiny. I mean, he carried it off. He's a good actor, but again, if you knew anything about Henry VIII, it was kind of like, I don't know. There were many points where I found myself almost giggling at inappropriate moments when, Henry VIII is staring up at somebody. But anyway, so yeah, we're trying to avoid situations like that, essentially. And it's challenging. We had more leeway when we were doing the Valar, frankly. Once we got into elves, that got a little more challenging. But, like, for instance, we didn't want to cast a 5-foot Galadriel, for instance. Like, that was just... No matter how good the actress was, we could not have a 5-foot nothing Galadriel. That just wouldn't fly. Yeah.
Well, Marvel somehow managed to make it look like what's his face? Tony Stark is the same height or taller than Pepper Potts.
Right.
So I'll be okay.
Right.
Well, that's because the actor is wearing platform heels in the scenes with her.
Right.
Or she's barefoot.
Or she's barefoot, right.
In the Avengers, she's barefoot for the one scene. So yeah, they make it work, but it's a challenge.
And I've met her. She's not really that tall.
But I think the actor and the actress are the same height. So if you put her in 3-inch heels, you have a problem.
Right. Anyway, so sorry, this is a digression to explain why we care about their heights, because it's it's important. Anyway, okay, all right. So those are our announcements. What we are looking forward to. Without further ado, let us plunge into our outline. So we had done episode 8, in which what happened in episode 8? That was the burning of the ships, wasn't it?
Sure.
Yeah.
I think we burned the ships. I know we burned the ships. I think we ended with the burning of the ships. Yeah.
Last time we discussed the Doom of Mandos and the burning of the ships.
Doom of Mandos and the burning of the ships. Okay, right. That's what I thought. Okay, so we ended with that, and we got Amrod safely killed off, and Amros survived. By the way, general comment on Amros's character in episode, and like for the end of the season, we'll come back and talk about him at various other points probably. But I like Grumpy Amros rather. I think that that's good. I almost would like want to see him rebel more, but and in fact I'm almost, I have to, it's too late now because I already conceded, but in retrospect I'm thinking, I should have lobbied harder, not harder for his death, but I should have driven a harder bargain. I think I should have demanded that my condition of agreeing to let Amros live would be to have him rebel against the other Feanorians entirely. But it's okay.
We do have the opportunity to go in that direction in season 4 if that's something you'd like to see.
Well, I'm having a hard time seeing how he and I like the trajectory that you're taking him. Like, it makes sense, right? It makes sense that he's gonna be he's gonna be really down on everything that the Feanorians. He's gonna be anti-Feanor, right? He's gonna be he's stuck with the oath himself. He's already sworn it, so he's stuck with the oath, but he hates it, and he doesn't just hate it, but sees through it, right? Knows it's pointless, has already seen how destructive it is. Nobody needs to tell him, that that the oath of Feanor has bad consequences and stuff. He's already seen them and has felt the bitterness of that as much as he's gonna. So to see him then go from being like, well, okay, let's carry on fulfilling the oath, I would think that he would have to come to the same conclusion that Maglor is going to finally come to after the War of Wrath. The whole less harm shall we do in the breaking conclusion. I would think that Amros would come to a great deal sooner than any of the rest of his brothers.
Now, I do think that the rescue of Mithros will figure into his character quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
I think that he might have a glimmer of hope that, okay, maybe this isn't impossible.
Right.
And then we're going to get the near knife, and it's all downhill from there. Right. He realizes, no, we're never going to, this is never going to happen.
Okay. So basically the idea is that he is hoping that Mithros, basically he's willing to go along and stay with the family because Mithros is in charge, and now that the Feanorians are under new management, he's hoping that it's where things are gonna move into a genuinely different direction, right?
Yes, we needed to give him something to hang his hat on, some glimmer of hope, some thing to be rooting for. So we've chosen Mithros, which will allow for some dynamic changes in his character arc as things change with.
And that's
when Mithros fails at the near knife, and the balance of power is going to swing back towards the Sea Bros. Things are it's going to be obvious to him that Mithros is not going to fix this.
Right. Yeah, no, and that works very organically, the whole, kind of hanging his hat on Mithros thing, because of how Mithros stood aside at the burning, right? So Mithros is literally the only one of his brothers that he would be able to kind of stick to, that he would not want to just distance himself from. So yeah.
Right.
And
we had to give him some level of trust, and since Mithros is currently captive, it puts that into starker perspective than it would if we had him focused on something else.
Right, and that makes a lot of sense. And then you add in the fact that when Mithros is rescued, he's going to be changed, right? But also he's going to, relinquish his claim to the kingship of the Noldor to Fingolfin, and that very un-Feanorian act of humility and gratitude on, and remorse on Mithros' part, I would think would not only be something which would be heavily advocated by Amros, but also, again, a clear sign to Amros that, the Feanorians are under new management now, right? We're not just continuing in the same direction that Feanor was taking us in. So that works. I like that. Anyway, but sorry. That wasn't exactly a digression. Just kind of a general, because I know there's only like kind of Amros bits here and there in a bunch of these different episodes. But just while it was on my head and were mentioning the burning the ships, I wanted to just mention that because I thought that was something that in general I really liked over the course of the end of the season here in your outlines. All right. So episode 9. What are some issues from episode? So let's just quick recap, right? So we've got Mablung trying to prepare the Green Elves for battle, the dwarves failing to arrive, and now and the Green Elves starting to die. Now, remind me, when do we stop? The death of Denethor happens here.
Yes,
no.
Denethor dies.
Denethor dies in episode 9, but then the battle is still going in episode 10, or do we
no,
we finish it
in
here.
episode 10 we go back to the dwarves fighting
right
the orcs.
right okay,
so
okay,
like part 2 of the battle.
Yeah right. And I just love that. But anyway, sorry, the way that you guys handled the green elf dwarf conflict thing after the battle is just brilliant. I absolutely love it. But anyway, we'll get to that in episode 10. Okay, great. So we get the death of Denethor and all that stuff here. That's excellent. Tell me more about stuff you guys wanted to, things, moments you were kind of uncertain about or interested to discuss more from this episode.
So one of the things that was very important to me was to not make it look like Mablung and Thingol are completely oblivious to what the situation is.
Right.
There's no way that you put the Green Elves toe-to-toe with the Orcs.
Right.
There just isn't.
Right.
They already know that is a doomed proposition.
Right.
So we had to find a way to set it up so that that was never their intention. It was never their intention to put the Green Elves in contact, in direct contact with the Orcs.
Right.
But that's just the way the battle happened because there was because not everything was coordinated perfectly.
Right.
Which you have to be able to do when you're dealing with several different armies coming from several different directions, and you have almost no frame of reference.
Right.
We almost had to assume that the stars are moving in this because if they aren't, there is no way that they can coordinate with the dwarves when they're supposed to arrive any place.
Yes, bringing us right smack back against the astronomical difficulties of the first age of Middle-earth. Yeah. I mean, how can you coordinate the telling of... I mean, how can anyone measure time in Middle-earth?
Yeah. Well, they do have hourglasses. I mean, they're not hours, but you turn over the sand and it falls like
periods of time glasses. Yes.
Yeah. Right. Yes.
But yeah, that's about the only non-connected to the Earth form of time telling that we could come up with.
Yeah, because see, here's an interesting question, right? I mean, here's this is another one of those fun moments, right, where you kind of realize something that you always sort of took for granted. Dwarves, if you're subterranean, you're not going to have either. Not only are you not going to have a measure of like a regular day-night thing, right? You would have a culture which has no objective day or night, no seasons, and no years. Right?
Even after this, yeah.
Even after this, yeah. I mean, I'm thinking
dwarves,
yeah.
The dwarves, I can believe, have some sort of mechanical clocks, even at this point.
They would have...
like crude mechanical clocks in some way.
Even something like hourglasses.
Like water,
I mean, I would
water
think
clocks.
that they would have glass, right? I mean, they would have discovered about the melting of sand and things. I mean, that seems like a perfectly dwarvish thing for them to discover. So yeah, no, I mean, I agree. They would have, for exactly purposes like this, they would have, but there's no external standard, right? I mean, I'm just trying to
Right.
imagine.
It seems like the Dwarvish culture would have borrowed astronomical references to time from other cultures they've come in contact with, rather than
Yes.
initially developed it themselves. Because
Yes.
clearly they eventually do have that.
Which
Clearly.
we may have just solved the issue of how the dwarves relate.
Yes, exactly.
So if we can call that, like, it's not in the outline at all, because we couldn't really come up with a concrete reason that doesn't look dumb.
Right.
But if they have no frame of reference when it comes to the stars, and in the next episode, if we have them mentioning, is this when we were supposed to be there, or is
Right.
if we
and they should be grumbling
there be
about
some
it.
confusion.
Right? I
Yeah,
mean, they should be
exactly.
To them, this is it would be. Well, okay, hang on. Let's back up a step first. But I mean, let me just say, I agree. That totally, kind of like the Weregild thing, right? We're talking about just like cultural differences. So it's not about. It's really their fault, and they're trying to blame the elves. Like, it's just as much the elves' fault that they didn't realize. I mean, this is a question of both of them taking for granted stuff, which is sort of the way their culture looks at things and not understanding the differences. So, okay, but let's back up a second. So you're the dwarves. You live almost entirely underground. It's true that there are some dwarves that come above ground, but what's happening above ground? Especially now, right? I mean, like, day and night can't help but obtrude themselves upon your notice when you come above ground, right? Like, they would notice that sometimes the sun was up and sometimes it wasn't. But now, without the sun and moon even, right, when it's just the stars up, even if the stars are moving, are the dwarves going to care? Are they going to even notice? Why would they, right? They're not going to. I mean, they're not going to spend enough time above ground to pay attention to that kind of thing, and they're not going to be especially interested in it anyway, right? So, so you're the early first age dwarves. You are living in a completely timeless, completely seasonless. Well, not timeless, obviously, but in a dayless and monthless and seasonless and yearless life. How do you live? How does that affect your culture? How does your culture grow up as a result of that?
Markless environment.
In a what?
It's a markless environment.
Yeah.
There's no markers.
So now, they still have to sleep.
I was going to say, they are mortal, so they do have lifespans.
They have lifespans and they sleep.
Matter.
Right.
And they sleep. But I've noticed that for myself, when I lived in a tropical place that didn't have seasons, it did feel very timeless because the sun came up and went down at the same time every day, all year round.
Right.
So it never got later. It never got colder. The leaves never fell off the trees.
Right.
There was nothing that was signaling to me with my own experience that time has gone by. So September was the same thing as December.
Right. Right.
So that is I would think the similar thing with living underground. It becomes timeless in that everything is always the same for conditions. There is no season to talk about.
Right. So I would think that basically that, so in as much as dwarves have circadian rhythms, right, they wouldn't be oriented to any kind of objective day or night. So different dwarves, they all have to sleep. But they don't all necessarily have to sleep the same amount exactly, and there's no reason to think they would all sleep at the same time, right? Because I would think that the dwarf culture, rather than being sort of communal, right, rather than a dwarf settlement, say, just imagining like a little city of dwarves underground, it's hard for me to imagine that the dwarves would be like, okay, let's all get together and agree that now is sleep time. We'll ring a bell or something, and then everybody goes to bed, and then we'll have everybody wake up. That's not how they'd operate. They're too individualistic, right? They would each be off doing their own thing, and like when a particular craftsman needed rest, he'd go and sleep, and then he'd get back up again, and he'd go back to work, right? So,
It depends on how much organization there is, because
right.
what I was thinking is that if they have any kind of like not factory work per se, but but anything where they need like 50 guys working on anything for any length of time, they would work in shifts, and they would think about rest in shifts.
In shifts, yes. Yes. Yeah, no, that's clear. So if you have like a big excavation project or something, as you say, right, some big multi-dwarf effort would be coordinated in that way. But I would have to think that by and large, those things would be considered an exception, right? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a military situation as well with an army, you need to take turns being awake and on watch. So the shift concept works either for the military point of view or from the construction point of view.
So they would have some mechanism to measure time. And what would be the standard? I mean, we were talking
the length of time a dwarf could work without rest.
Yeah, that would have to be it, right?
So if you figure it would be double the length of an average human day now. So you figure a dwarven shift is probably about 16 hours.
Right. Right.
And so they rest, they eat, they come back, they work. So maybe they do like 16 hours on, 16 hours off.
Yeah, probably 16 and 12, maybe. Something like that. Because remember, like, what's downtime? What does a dwarf do for fun, right? How does a dwarf recreate?
That's true.
Carving, right? I mean, they're going to do stuff.
You go back and forth like that, you're going to run into a few organizational issues.
Plus, there are girl dwarves, right? So we got the relationship angle in there. So they got to have a couple hours.
So Trish has come up with something for them to do when they're not working and sleeping. They can
yay! Around, but I mean,
quality time.
There aren't a lot of girl dwarves.
It's date night for the dwarves. Yeah. No, that's right.
It's like, listen, I got to go home. My wife's really on my case. I haven't seen her in ages.
Well, no, because she's going to be off doing her thing, right? So like it's.
That's true, actually. Knowing
if I were a married dwarf,
girls are also off working in the mines too, right? So they got their own
thing.
shifts that they're working.
Yeah, exactly.
They're not.
If I were a married dwarf, I would tell absolutely nobody
that you were married.
Yeah, there's not that many of them. Like somebody's gonna find a way for me to have an unhappy accident.
Right. Yeah, besides just the natural, yeah, exactly, the natural secretiveness of the dwarves.
I mean, and one assumes there are time for conjugal visits because we do see sons of dwarves sprinkled in the stories.
Date night does happen, that's clear, but see, that would be a thing. Like I would assume,
probably not very often. Could be not very often. Maybe on dwarf festival days. So you're right. If we could actually have it be like 16 hours and 12 hours,
But see, yeah. I mean, so I would think so. If they're married, right? So if you've got married dwarves, they don't necessarily have to spend all their time together. I mean, I don't imagine dwarf couples being all like, let's, hang out together. And I mean, I don't know, like.
Let's Netflix and chill.
Yeah, exactly. I don't see dwarf couples doing Netflix and chill. I really don't. I mean, maybe they would. I don't know, but I would, but all you'd have to do is just like, so basically if like dwarves who are either like married and living and working together with a spouse, or similarly dwarves who are, working with other dwarves on a project or something like that, would coordinate their circadian rhythms, basically, right? Like they would agree to sleep at the same time. So I agree that they would create some kind of apparatus, possibly something as simple as a large hourglass or something,
or a water clock.
Or a water clock, yeah. that would take as the basic unit of time. Because why would they subdivide like the concept of an hour, right? Why would they do that? They wouldn't care about hours. They would,
No, they wouldn't.
yeah.
They have
Well,
like
the easiest way is you have a candle that burns down, and when it reaches the end, that's the time is up. So you just make all your candles the same size, and then everyone knows the amount of time it takes a candle to burn down is
Right.
You know,
But if you make
something like
fat
that.
candles, they don't have to burn down the. Though, do they make candles? I guess they'd make candles.
they have to have something lighting underground.
Mostly.
they probably make them out of earwax.
Earwax.
Okay, now.
I think they would make. Would they burn things?
You know, they could actually burn actual crude oil.
They could make
Kerosene lamps.
kerosene lamps, exactly. They could make lamps. They could make. But see, that's the other thing I'm thinking. Again, especially for the early dwarves, they're not going to need all that much light, are they? I mean,
They're underground. Of course they need light.
well, no.
Now,
like-
you know,
For
one of
fine
the
work.
things, you know, Lotro
For fine work,
actually
they
sort of
definitely
solved
would.
this with those mirrors. You know, how you'd have
yeah.
like holes to the outer world where there's, you know, the light was shining through, and then they would use these series of mirrors to
Right.
bounce the light kind
Right,
of
of
thing.
course,
And then there are also the shimmering the shimmering rocks, which may be more. That might be more.
Well,
likely.
I was thinking more along those later lines because, of course, even mirror systems are post sunlight, right? So pre sunlight, we wouldn't even have that.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
But yeah, I'm thinking in terms of like luminescence, like
Bioluminescence and
Mushrooms
caves.
or fungi
Yeah.
or something.
Would bioluminescence be enough to? Because I know they need light, but they don't need much light. I mean, their eyes would be very good in the dark, right? So, like for instance, would a smith need more than the light of the forge? I don't know that they would. You know, I mean, we do, but obviously dwarves don't need to light up. Gimli speaks of the lamps in Khazad-dûm. But that doesn't necessarily mean that the place was lit up like a modern human thing would be underground.
Plus, that could have been a later technology from what the time we're
Right,
talking
exactly. It could be, and I kind of get the impression from Gimli that it was like the splendor of the lamps rather than, and also
about. The light they were giving.
Right, exactly.
The
It's
abundance of light.
Yeah. The
So-
only dwarvish settlement we're going to see this season is the small forge of Gemelbrog, which
Right.
Has been destroyed already.
right.
So, as you pointed out, yes, a forge could be lit by forge fire, and that maybe is all they need. They might have some additional lamps or candles or something, but
Right.
it's not
They're like
necessary.
fine
You don't want to
work
go
or
that way.
something.
But yeah, see, this is why I'm kind of thinking that like luminescent fungus would probably be enough light for dwarves whose eyes are very keen in the dark.
And there's some beautiful caves that have glowworms in them and stuff,
Yeah.
especially in New Zealand. I don't know if
Yeah.
you've seen.
Yeah, no,
photos, but-
I haven't, but exactly. I mean, that's the kind of this is why I'm kind of balking at candles. That's what I'm getting around to, is that I'm not sure that they need fire for light. I'm not sure they need that quantity of light. That might be too bright for them. I mean, in fact, we could even have them. I would think that a glowing forge would be like the dwarvish standard for something super bright. Like that's like the upper end of their scale of bright light, essentially.
Okay.
So the dwarves are late because they mix up this newfangled new elvish time
Right.
standard.
Okay. Hang on a second. Now,
That they don't
I
understand.
appreciate you're trying to push us back along, Nick, but that's reckless. One more step before we get there. Okay. So we've established that the dwarves don't. Okay. So they don't have an hour-based culture, right? They just they think in terms of work periods and rest periods, right? So if they're going to count time, if a dwarf were to say something like, okay, I'll meet you a week from next Tuesday, right? How they would do that would be like they would count the number of work periods between now and then. Right.
So many sleeps until.
So many sleeps until that. Yeah, exactly. So
they probably also have a concept of like a pay period or something too.
Right.
I don't think we want to introduce currency at this point.
I don't think we want to do economy, but yeah.
Like if you have a group of dwarves working on a particular project, they must get some kind of remuneration for that, or like some amount of food or whatever it is that
Clearly,
they do.
there's compensation involved, and dwarves are going to have the most advanced economy of anybody. But
right,
definitely.
I'm not saying that
they're not getting a bi-weekly paycheck though.
No, that's true. That's true. But one can imagine that they are able to, that when they divide longer periods of time, they do so in that way. Like how long it takes, how long it takes a person to do X, to achieve X amount of value.
Right. Sure. Yeah, so they dwarves obviously have contracts, right? I mean, Bilbo's contract shows that that's how they think, right? So that all makes sense. My big question, though, as far as time is concerned, what would the cultural relationship to time be? So one temptation, since there is so little to mark the passing of time, there is a difference between working and sleeping, but that's literally the only difference, the only way to tell one stretch of time from another if you're a dwarf. So the thing that they wouldn't have any sense of is like, it's going to take 3 weeks to do this. Like it will take a bunch of works, but a bunch of work periods, but who cares? Like we live a long time. Like what else do we have to do? In some cultures where there is not very precise marking of time, you will have like the no concept of like the idea of punctuality, right? Where like things just kind of happen when they happen, and you kind of wait for the stirring to do something, but the idea of like being on time or being late for something is,
Well, generally in those cultures, what happens is everyone gathers and waits for the important person to arrive, and when the important person arrives, the activity begins. So it's
it's kind of like this webinar.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. We can relate to this. So obviously here's the question I'm getting around to. The question I'm getting around to is, how puzzled are the dwarves going to be? Is the problem that they are cool with the punctuality thing? They just like the calculations are wrong on both sides, or
I don't think they tried that hard to figure it out.
Okay.
I think they had to figure it out on some level, and so they had they started marching. They had somebody kind of watching the stars, trying to figure out what the elves were talking about, and they got a rough idea.
Right.
Nobody was expecting the orcs to immediately launch themselves at the elves.
Yeah. It's interesting because this proposal of, hey, let's gray elves, green elves, and dwarves all come together from different geographic locations and converge in one spot at one time in order to engage a fourth group of people who are also moving independently and doing what they want to do, right? Let's coordinate that and make that. I mean, goodness knows that kind of strategic situation is hard enough, under even like modern communication situations, right? And so what we're looking at is really medieval, the first attempt.
Medieval armies, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Medieval armies certainly wouldn't do it that way. What they would do is they would gather together first.
Right.
That's what you do. You gather together first, then you split off to do whatever maneuvering that you're going to do, and then a trumpet sounds, or there's some kind of audible signal
Right.
that
Now
tells
you
you
could
when
coordinate
action's going
if
on.
you had, I mean, you would use, scouts and errand riders and things to coordinate between armies. So it would be possible to do this kind of thing. But I agree. I mean, this is a big undertaking, which is kind of also leading me. Well, no, never mind. I'll save that segue. We still have to do the dwarves. Could we make it as simple as this? Now, Norn might kind of guess this or worry about this, but how do the elves measure time? By the stars, presumably.
Yeah.
If the stars,
so they're
assuming the
already
stars
measuring
move,
it.
yeah,
Yeah, assuming they move, they could already be measuring time in 24-hour cycles.
right. Yes. So the elves are measuring actual days, and what they don't realize is that the dwarvish days are longer, right? They don't realize,
Yes.
like, it doesn't even occur to them. Like, they don't even think about the fact that the dwarves are obviously not counting days by the stars.
So this is a conversion factor error.
Conversion factor error, exactly. The dwarves are operating on like maybe a 30-hour day, something like that. 28 hours
That's
we were
probably
suggesting, right? 16 on, 12 off.
30 as well, because then you have 20 hours and 10 hours, and the math works out.
Yeah. So you're so maybe that's why that's ultimately where the error comes in.
So
Well,
I
they
may
can't
have you guys may have already handled this, but I'm like, how do we show this in the show? I mean, do we have a
Right.
narrator going?
We
But
don't.
the elves
No.
little did the elves know. Dun, dun.
No, Azagal and what's his face, the king of Nalgrod, could be
Lauren?
complaining
Lauren.
about it.
Lauren.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
Well,
I was
yeah.
trying to
So
figure out how to get that into story.
yeah, we don't necessarily even need to. The point of what we're going to convey in the show is both sides think they're totally right. I mean, but I think if we can show some reason at some point, I mean, it may come out at some point to explain why this problem was, but we don't worry about it, especially at the beginning. At the beginning, it just looks like the dwarves, we're kind of from the elves' viewpoint at first, with the elves being like, where are the stupid dwarves? The dwarves are late. I always knew they were untrustworthy. Those tree killers can't be trusted. And then, so they're like, and then they show up and they're like, we're here right on time. Like, what are you all so
Yeah, well,
bothered
not
about?
only that, we're early.
Yeah,
The
we're
dwarves can be
early.
ticked off. Why are you ticking us? You said 4 days. We're here in 2.5. You're 3.5. What's the deal?
Right,
but
exactly.
the problem is the elves won't say day. That's the issue.
Yeah. And
That's true.
But yes, there's a translation issue on top
They would
of
say something like turning of the stars or something like that.
Right. Well, the Elvish word for day could literally mean a 24-hour cycle rather than the time when the sun's up.
right.
That's possible.
I
But they're
think
not
that's
speaking
what Ray
Elvish.
means. Yeah.
Yeah, so we could actually introduce the issue, or like when they're talking with Norn, basically, and Norn could not realize. I mean, how's Norn even gonna know that there's a difference in the amount of time?
Well, that's true. Yeah.
Because I mean,
Norn has been living with the elves, so he should pick up on different cycles and different patterns. But it's easy to make that mistake. I mean, it's a new culture to him. He might not have realized yet.
and does he?
And he
even...
probably didn't bring his clock with him.
Exactly. He doesn't have a water clock with it. Like the dwarves' clocks can be huge, right? So it, even his own personal sleep cycles will have been thrown off by living among the elves, right? So he will have, and this is a thing that would happen almost unconsciously if you're out traveling in a different place and living among different people. He would have accommodated his sleep schedule to their daily routine.
Right.
So even he might be actually unaware of it.
They're not there yet. Yeah.
Yeah. So we could set this up by having, when they make the original, when we're having like Thingol and Norn talk about the arrangement, like we will meet you in, 4 whatever the noun we use is, right? The thing which would essentially be days, right? Or 5 days or however many. And we can introduce a translation issue there, right? The word that the elves use for day could be one that's unknown to Norn, and he asks for them to explain what that means, right? And then he's like, oh, yes, like, so like when you're asleep and awake. Yeah, sure. Okay, right. Yeah, we do the same thing. So fine, I will tell them to be here in 4 of those, or 5 of those, or however many it is, right?
Problem is, the way it's structured now, we are introducing this confusion after the fact.
Right.
So we're having Thingol confronting Norn about the fact that there are no dwarves here.
Right.
Rather than showing the setup.
Right. Yeah.
Right. So now that can be done. We can. I think that there is a way that can be written in the dialogue without it clunky, but we'll just have to kind of call that out in the outline.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, like, I don't even know, like, yeah, we can bring it up. I don't think this has to be fully explained, right?
No.
I think
that it's going to make more sense once we see the dwarves in the next episode, and they're complaining about having to try to figure out what the elves mean.
Right. Right.
Yeah. And then they come across this piddling army of orcs.
Yes, I love that.
This is what they're complaining about? Really?
I love that. Oh, yeah, by the way, one thing that we could do to introduce the sort of the difference is whether it's Norn or somebody else who's talking to the other dwarves can talk about the movements of the stars, and we can have one of the other dwarves look up at the stars and say they move. You know, like they don't even know, right?
Well, I think they know that they move. What they may not be aware of is that it's the same ones over and over again.
Maybe. Well, one or the other.
Because if you travel outside for any length of time, you probably notice that.
But they haven't. I mean, the majority of the dwarves who are up there have never been above ground before. The only dwarves who have ever been above ground are like the ones who are up on lumber duty, right? And like Azakal's never been on lumber duty, so it seems to me very likely Azakal has never seen the stars in his life before. Why should he?
No, he met with Thingol once before, and that was at Sarnford.
Right. He did meet once before.
He definitely has traveled.
But even so, dwarves aren't the type that would like ponder the skies.
Or look up, frankly.
You know, they're like contemplating the earth, right? So they wouldn't even. I don't even think they may see the stars, but they wouldn't look at them long enough to even notice.
To notice that they had changed. Yeah, exactly.
No,
yeah.
I agree that they have not fully understood what's going on with the stars at this point in their culture.
Right.
Agreed.
Right. Hakan says we could just have them say what's meeting 350,000 heartbeats, but their hearts beat at different speeds, which they don't realize. So, yeah, no, but exactly. But then of course we get the comical scenes of dwarves being like, "Wait, I lost count. Were we at 25,876? Where were? Yeah." But see, yeah, okay, even that, the idea of counting. See, it's just way too small a unit of time. Only somebody with a real short lifespan would count things in heartbeats, right?
Although I totally believe that the elves can subconsciously count their heartbeats, but the dwarves probably can't.
Probably can't. Right? Yeah. But no, it's really fascinating to think about kind of units of time, because I would think that dwarves might have units of time, longer units of time. But I'm thinking, like, what would be the basis of their longer units of time? And I'm thinking it would be things like the amount of time it takes to forge an axe, say, like to forge a good axe head, which takes like 3 or 4 work sessions to get it to where you want it. So, eventually like that unit of 4 days, becomes a unit that is referred to, in that way. I'm just trying to think. It's fun to just kind of world build here and think about, to kind of put yourself into this viewpoint and think, how would they even among themselves talk about it? Especially since as they go on to become a more mercantile culture, if you're a mercantile culture, you do need to coordinate, right? I mean, you need to you need to be able to, because you're going to be encountering other cultures. You're going to be able to go there and back, and to know when to expect people, and to say how long your journey is going to take in order to calculate how much food you need to bring with you and all that kind of thing. So they would definitely develop perhaps also traveling based longer units of time. But yeah. Yeah, Hakan, we had decided that they don't use hourglasses because why would they count hours? They would have some larger clock that was that would count, that could measure the amount of time that they're, because the one thing a dwarf would need is a reminder of when they should stop working, right? Because it's like
and that actually could be a dwarf hour, right? That a single, like, a work cycle would be an hour to a dwarf.
Yeah, I mean, that's the unit. That's their basic unit. I don't think it would be subdivided. Why subdivide it? Like, what is the motivation for that? Yeah. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So yeah. Zach's asking if they're already trading with like the Longbeards and the other dwarf families at this point. I don't know. Possible, I suppose.
If anything, they probably have a very distant contact.
Yeah.
Like the roads haven't been built, right? That go down to...
I would think that they wouldn't do much overland travel yet. That's something that might open up later more. But, okay. Sorry. Anyway, let me move on to my next issue then. My next issue is with the tactical plan for the battle.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm closing my eyes because I need a map.
Yeah, I made one, but it's terrible. So
that's fine. Here's my problem. If you've got the orc army in the middle, and the gray elves on one side and the green elves on the other side, right?
So the intention was to envelop the orcs in kind of a V shape, all right, with the gray elves on the one side and the dwarves on the other, and to force them into kind of the morass where the green elves are supposed to be posted to pick the orcs off as they get forced in there.
Okay.
Now, the way that we had set it up, the gray elves were initially fully under the impression that the Ents were still there. They didn't know that they had gone, so they were assuming that the green elves are going to have this backup, which they don't have. So Mablung realizes this, and that's when he comes up with Plan B to set up a fallback position for the green elves, so they don't get overrun.
Okay.
Spoiler alert: it's not going to work.
It's not going to work, right? Because basically, here's the number one. So I see that. I guess my main question is, why aren't the green elves behind the gray elves line?
Mostly because it's if they aren't, well, mostly it's mostly a coordination issue. They're not planning to meet up and do this. And also remember, this is the first time that this has ever been done. They're not going to have the green elves come up behind them like a squad of archers or something.
Well, but see, that's kind of what I'm thinking. I mean, I get that their own military tactics aren't going to be, practiced and highly developed, but the number one reality of bringing the green elves into battle, I mean, Mablung, we know, is totally up on this, right? If there's one truth to which Mablung holds at this point, it is that the green elves should not be receiving the charge of the orcs, right? That they cannot stand against the orcs toe to toe. So even if you're not, kind of deploying them in some kind of sophisticated way, as a line of archers behind, a phalanx of foot or something like that. Nevertheless, the basic concept, we want to keep the green elves, or the gray elves between the orcs and the green elves. That would seem to be like basic battle concept number one from Mablung's point of view, you'd think, right? So
there has to be a reason he can't do that, because
yes.
Obviously if they did that, then the green elves would have been safe the whole time.
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm getting at, is we need to make sure that we convey, and, goodness knows, although it's very sensible to say, here's our complex battle plan, and oh goodness, our complex battle plan doesn't come off anything like we planned and gets hosed. That's fine, but that's a kind of thing that's sort of famously difficult to convey in an interesting and compelling fashion on screen. A lot of people who have tried that have failed.
Well, initially the plan was Mablung went into this with the plan that the Ents were going to be the shield for the Green Elves. Then it turns out the Ents aren't there, so he's going to use the morass to keep the orcs from approaching as long as he can, and he's going to continuously fall back. He doesn't know that it's going to turn into a rout.
Right. And
right.
If so, I guess one of the things that I'm wanting here, is that I'm wanting it to be, I'm pretty sure I'm wanting this to be the Green Elves' fault. It doesn't have to be somebody's fault, but it kind of does.
Is.
Yeah.
It's Denethor's fault because he's rash.
Right.
He acts rashly. He sees that the Grey Elves are alone, and he's concerned for their safety. So he's the one who orders the charge on the Orcish flank.
Right.
Now, and also he doesn't realize, Mablung knows, but Denethor doesn't realize that there's enough of the orcs to just turn around and swat him.
Right.
Which is exactly what happens.
Right.
And that fallback maneuver turns into a rout as a result.
Right. The fallback maneuver to Amon Arab.
Yes.
So they're going to be on Amon Arab at first, and then they see the orcs engage?
No, so the way that we have it set up is that there's a morass in between Amon Arab and the battlefield. There's like a stream that runs along behind. The way we've set it up is there's a stream that runs along behind Amon Arab, and that the stream passes through, kind of overflows the bank on one side,
right,
creating this swampy area.
Okay.
In between Amon Arab and the battlefield.
Okay.
We invented this entirely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Of course, but,
why not? That's great. If the elves are choosing the terrain, then we can make the terrain, whatever, that's fine. Like, they're choosing the terrain, that's what they should do. And if Thingol is there, then he can choose when he's going to attack the orcs. And the orcs that's the plan, yeah. The orcs are not strategic. The orcs' plan is like, we march in this direction and kill stuff, right? So they're perfectly cheerful. The orcs are cheerfully ready to be ambushed at any point, right? So maneuvering them into bad terrain shouldn't be challenging, in theory.
And Thingol thinks that he's going to be able to choose when the battle is going to begin, but he isn't. The orcs kind of take that from him. So he thinks that he can wait until everybody's in position, and the orcs will just hang out and kind of wait for him to be ready, essentially. But not necessarily like that, because obviously he thinks the dwarves are going to arrive a lot sooner than they do.
Right.
So he's expecting that it might be a mere matter of an hour.
Why doesn't Thingol just let him go and fall back and set up a different ambush after the dwarves get there?
Well, he gets into position to be ready for when the dwarves get there, and they don't. So he puts himself in the paths of the orcs, and then the orcs start. Yeah, so they're camped.
They're camped. Yeah.
Right.
As soon as the orcs discover the Sindar, the orcs attack. Obviously.
The orcs attack. Yeah. Right. That's what they do.
And Thingol is of the opinion that he can win this battle, so he launches his counterattack at the same time. He doesn't retreat because he thinks, okay, this is the right time. Like the dwarves aren't there, but we'll just go with it anyway.
Right.
It's not Thingol's intention to involve the Green Elves at this time. The Green Elves are supposed to be waiting for the dwarves and doing mop up, but Denethor just rushes in, and now Thingol isn't engaged in a battle. He doesn't have the freedom to fall back or relieve Denethor in some way.
So with the Green Elves attacking on one side and the Dwarves attacking on the other side, the Green Elves, rather, were going to kind of hang back and just, like, shoot into the middle, right? Like, just kill a bunch of orcs.
Right, essentially.
Well,
yeah.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Like, and the orcs might try to retreat into the morass, but that is just going to make them even easier targets for the Green Elves.
Right.
Because they're going to be slowed down.
Right.
Okay. One imagines that the Grey Elves, and again, we should have called this out, the Grey Elves are probably at least supplying them with a good number of steel-headed arrows.
Right. Right. Okay. Mablung brings warlike supplies, though not enough for everybody. Yeah.
He brings, but let's say that he brings enough ammunition for most of them.
Right.
Because that's easy. That's not a suit of armor.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Okay. And okay. So when the dwarves don't show up, and the Grey Elves are fighting the orcs essentially by themselves, Denethor sees that the orcs are too many for them, sees that the Grey Elves are in fact would be overrun, and so therefore calls a charge, and they lay into the side of the orcs, and then the orcs on that side, while continuing to engage Thingol on the other side, the left flank of the orcs turns and charges at the Green Elves, and they can't stand against them, and this is where Denethor dies, trying to hold them off as the Green Elves try to retreat, and they retreat back to Amon Arab.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, I mean, one of the things that I want to be very careful with this bit is to show that Denethor, he's not being merely rash.
Right.
Like, he's brave, and he's doing what he thinks is the right thing to do, because it needs to be done.
Right.
Because he can't bear to watch his new friends get slaughtered.
Right.
You know, and maybe Mablung is made out of colder stuff, and he can kind of like hold back and try to maneuver into a better position. But Denethor is a warmer individual.
Right. Right. Okay. So I'm seeing this now. So the Green Elves are rescued in the end by Thingol. So the Ents come and they help to stave off the assault, but it's not enough to completely stop it. So after a brief respite, it now looks like the Green Elves are going to be completely slaughtered and the Ents are going to be slaughtered until Thingol breaks through, right? So we just have Thingol eventually wins, and
Thingol basically wins through. Like he routs the orcs that are in his way, right? And so he's able to approach Amon Arab and put the ones that are still
right. Okay, so we should have a moment then. We should have sort of Thingol will have been fighting defensively, right? He will have set up a defensive front, and he will have been receiving the charge of the orcs, right? And holding them back and beating them off. To this point, that was his job at first, right? And then, so he should see the orcs swarming over Amon Arab, right?
Yeah. Well, we can have a shot where he sees that.
Yeah. And then he's going to have to order a charge, right? They're going to have to leave their defenses and push down through so that they push through the orcs that are still attacking them, so that they can get up to Amon Arab. And
Right.
Yes.
And also,
yes.
Bulldog has shifted his attention.
Right.
Essentially, the arrival of the Ents forces Bulldog to turn and deal with what's going on in Amanera,
Yes.
because now his guys can't deal with this enemy. Like,
Right.
not without severe motivation and a little bit of leadership by example. So
Right.
he goes up there, and now the orcs that are facing Thingol are definitely more afraid of the Grey Elves than they are of Bulldog, who isn't there.
Right, exactly. But yeah, we do have to have, but it's obviously a risk for them to leave their defensive position, right? The Grey Elves. So we have to have a moment where Thingol sees the Grey Elves and the Ents in danger, right? Bulldog charging his way up the hill. He maybe sees Bulldog take down an Ent, right? As I know you guys had an Ent being taken down by Bulldog with an axe, right? Which I think is good. So Thingol sees
A
that.
young Ent.
Right, not tree. Well, they're all young, right? In theory.
Just keep in mind that this is a pretty far distance, and it's pitch black.
Right. Yeah, but
So I don't know how
elf.
how
He's
yeah, but I don't know how specifically he can see at that
There's
in the dark.
torches.
yeah. The orcs would have torches, right? The orcs would be all
Yeah.
about torches, right? Let's cut things up and set them on fire, right? That would be an orc thing. So okay, yeah, all right.
Yes, we can find a place to add in like a brief shot of Thingol.
Thingol should charge. One of his people should be like, but if we charge, they could, they're more than, they outnumber us. They'll they'll overrun us in the open, right? And Thingol's like, the green elves need us. Charge anyway, and then they charge and come through. So I mean, we have to show. This is a. I mean, I remember, as you guys were emphasizing before, this is our only chance to show Thingol in battle. We'll never see it again, right? So, Thingol having that kind of a, damn the torpedoes battle leadership moment is kind of cool, actually, right?
And it kind of mirrors what Denethor did.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
it honors
exactly.
that.
Exactly, it does. Yeah, he responds to the rash, unwise but bold and self-sacrificing charge of Denethor with his own, calculated risk at least charge at the end, which rescues them. So yeah, no, that all works exactly, except more successful, as Aslan's Compass says. Yeah, on Twitch, exactly. So it will be the reciprocation, but the more successful reciprocation, and then they drive them off together, and so we have then Thingol and Mablung meeting on the field there at the end there. Okay, good. All right, I'm feeling clearer about that. It's really good to have a clear visual concept of these things. Okay.
I'm not surprised. In order to explain it at the time, we came up with this. I had to draw a very hasty map.
Right.
Which, yeah.
It's all good. Yeah. No, exactly. That's just what I'm thinking about. So okay. Meanwhile, on the Helcaraxa, by the way, I loved the Helcaraxes. Again, another just overview thing. I loved the Helcaraxa stuff. I thought you guys did a great job with the Helcaraxa stuff. I've got one issue with the Helcaraxa thing, but it's later, so I won't worry about it right now. This is the episode. Is this the one in which... Okay, no, this is where they're deciding to go. Right, so, okay. And we get Elenwe's speech about why they should go, and I really like Elenwe being the spokesperson for that. For so many reasons, both to have her death be not her own fault, but to have her death be something which she obviously was willing to risk. There's some irony to it, but it's not just bitter irony, right? There's also self-sacrifice.
Giving her agency.
Yeah, exactly. She is she is the agent of her own destiny there, and she's also right. Like that. this is something that could even kind of come out in conversation later, I would think. A conversation perhaps between Fingolfin and Turgon. Because Turgon, I gotta think, is going to feel fairly bitter about this, right? Turgon is going to recall what Elenwe says about, their family having a great destiny in Middle-earth, and saying, like, I get, part of his bitterness, or rather that his grief for her death could be also tangled with a sense of bitterness and remorse. Like, she was a fool, right? She was wrong. She was the one who said we should go and that our family had this great destiny, and it killed her, right? Can even her, foresight, which he was, want to trust implicitly, be trusted. Her foresight failed her, right? As will be said of Gandalf later on. And Fingolfin can, or somebody else, if we want to give the speech to somebody else, can basically say, in fact, we could even foreshadow that conversation if we wanted to, that her foresight was not based on, safety for herself. She didn't say that she knew that they would all survive and that everything would be happy. She just said that their family was going to, and you still have Idril, right? And you still have, your siblings, like your family, you still have Arathel, right? You still have Idril.
For now.
Yeah, exactly. Both of those are bound to turn out equally well. But anyway, yeah. So some kind of, because we, on the one hand, we want to, Turgon is going to be the one who's going to wear that kind of prophetic mantle, right, in Middle-earth. So maintaining that and showing him sort of embracing that. But I think it's really interesting that we have that prophetic mantle tangled with his grief. I think that is one of the consequences of having Elenwe speak that out and then die on the Helcaraxa, which I think is just so interesting. So, that opens up so many really powerful story possibilities. I just love how that works. Elenwe's foretelling and then tragic death are awesome. Quick, and any quick Helcaraxa thought? This is only the very beginning. This is only the Helcaraxa decision, of course, as I said. But yeah.
We had to kind of be very careful with what we were doing here because we basically have several points at which if we were not careful, we'd be asking Fingolfin's host the same question 2 or 3 or 4 times.
Right.
Do we go or do we not go?
Right.
And you can't just keep hammering that same question over and over again, which is this kind of essentially a similar problem to what we had with Arwen in the season 2 frame.
Yes.
So what we were doing here was to make sure that we were kind of nuancing the difference between do we continue or do we not. Now we're seeing how hard this is going to be. Is this do we try to find some other way? What do we do?
Right.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. But one of the effects of one way in which there is one way in which I think the continued hammering on the one repeated question, because of course at the end of the day it's not like they're not going to be asking that question again and again, right? I agree that it's not very interesting for us just to keep coming back to it and giving the same answer to it every time, right? But at the same time, somebody in that situation, when they are in a hardship which they chose themselves, right? They knew this was going to be hard. They didn't know how hard, but they knew it was going to be hard. They chose to do it. The question is, do you still want to go? Do you want to, or should we turn back? Because as things get worse and worse and worse, the question is the same, but the answers and the reasoning behind the answers can't just be the same, right? The reason to start out on that journey isn't necessarily the same as the reason for continuing after things have gotten so horrible, right?
Right, the whole sunk cost fallacy that just because you started something and invested all this time and effort doesn't mean you should keep going.
Right, exactly. And in particular, one of the things that I'm thinking of is wanting to see a kind of refining process for Fingolfin personally, but really for all of them. There are a couple ways in which it can go, right? I mean, they could emerge. On the one hand, it's easy to say that they emerge from the Helcaraxa like hating Feanor even more than they hated him before, right? But, you know, also I kind of wonder because, like, yes, it is psychologically viable that somebody who is undergoing an ordeal like that could latch onto something like anger against Feanor and have that fuel them so that when they get to the end of it, they're wholly obsessed with it, right? Because it's been the one thing that has kept them going throughout. But that's kind of exactly my question. There are some people, there's a, you know, and it was Angrod, right? That we had be the voice of the spokesperson for this, for whom vengeance against Feanor is their primary motivating force, right? That is like their reason number one for crossing the Helcaraxa. But my question is, on, you know, day 8 of the Helcaraxa crossing, is it still enough, right? Do you decide, well, maybe we should just, is it worth dying for? You know, is it worth enduring everything that you're going to endure for? The argument that I would want to make is that for the majority of the people of Fingolfin as they're traveling across, the the bad reason, the vengeful reason, the anger, the rage, the sense of betrayal isn't going to be enough. That's something that's going to be kind of almost burned away. Like, if that were all that's driving them, they would just have turned back because it's not worth it, right? At the end of the day, it's not worth all of the death. It's not worth the suffering. It's too high a cost just to get back at Feanor. Better to return to Valinor than that. There has to be a positive reason for moving forward. And again, we talked about this when we talked about this decision in the first place, right? That it can't just be vengeance. There has to be and this is one of the reasons why we talked about that speech which you guys gave to Elenwe, right? About the positive destiny that they have over in Middle-earth. This sense of duty that it is for some reason important. It is important. They need to go. They want to fight Morgoth. They don't want to you know, there are like good reasons for them to go. And I can see it going one of two ways, right? Over the course of the ordeal and the suffering. Either, again, you just become megalomaniacally focused on your, like, vengeance so that at the end, all of the other good reasons have kind of gone and you just have the one thing which you have with increasing irrationality focused on to just kind of keep yourself going. So either they come out just mad for revenge and, you know, kind of burned out otherwise, or the revenge thing has kind of passed because it wasn't enough. Like, it wasn't enough alone to keep them going. They have had to fall back on, they have had to, they may have been able to list 4 or 5 reasons, right? One of which was vengeance against Feanor that motivated them to start the journey. But by the end, it's not going to be enough to end the journey. So by the end of the journey, that will have refined down to really possibly one single thing. And that one thing, I think, should be a good thing. And a positive and a constructive thing rather than a destructive thing. And I'm not saying that nobody feels vengeful anymore and they're all over it, you know, by the time they get over. But I think that we should see something of that kind of refining process. Do you follow? I mean, does this make any sense?
I agree. I want to.
Go on.
I was going to say, I want to see a similar refining process with Maedhros after his ordeal hanging on Thangorodrim.
Yes.
So I consider the Helcaraxa experience to have done the same thing to the host of Fingolfin.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really wonderful point. Just the fact that when Fingolfin and Maedhros meet again, there's going to be a kind of fellow feeling between them because of what they have endured, right? And I think both of them will see that.
So in the episodes beyond this, the next thing that's going to happen to them is that we're going to have like the death of Hope, right? So
Right.
Ellen Way's going to die, right?
Yeah.
Then we have the following episode. We see them kind of from Tillion's point of view,
Right.
and Tillion is deliberately giving them some hope back. They're not alone.
Right.
The
Right.
final episode that they're on the Helcarax itself, Galadriel is clearly driven by a thirst for revenge, along with her desire to create kingdoms of her own and all that stuff.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it turns out that that isn't enough,
Right.
and that it has to be hope. Like,
Right.
hope is the thing that gets them past the Helcarax, not the desire for revenge.
Right. Right. Yes, exactly. It has to be. It has to be hope, and also, and not just hope for themselves, but seeing themselves as the agents of hope, right? As the bringers of hope for Middle Earth.
Yeah.
Um,
Even if it's a fool's hope.
Yeah, yeah, and it certainly would seem it. But of course, again, that could even be. I mean, that should be at the heart of Elenwe's prophecy, right?
Yeah.
There's and just the way also, man, the way in which Elenwe's prophecy foreshadows Huor's prophecy is also really cool, right? Yeah, I like it. I like it. She's seeing this with the eyes of death, even though she doesn't realize it. Nobody else does either, right? Yeah. No, I like it. It's good. It all works. Yeah, good. Okay, cool. And last thing, frame is okay. Yeah, the beginning of the frame. So I don't like Aragorn getting lost, mostly because I want him to. I think that his realization that he was wrong to do what he did, I think needs to come, because again, the parallel with Aragorn is Feanor specifically, right? So his realization about being wrong should come with charging forward, right? He's charged forward on his own. He's done the sort of made the Feanorian decision to say, to decide that Hamilcar is useless baggage, right? And only an impediment to his own personal ambitions. And so he's going to leave him behind.
Get that later.
Yeah, we are. But I don't, I'm, if we show too soon that my fear is that if we make him get lost and circle around and not realize that he circled around, the only lesson that he's learning is that he's incompetent and needs help, which is not a useless lesson to learn, but it's a different lesson to learn. And it certainly isn't one that Feanor learns, so he's not in that way. So I'm kind of thinking, yeah, I'm just saying that seems to me to introduce a factor that I'm not really convinced is germane exactly. I would kind of want him to push forward confidently and not have his confidence be totally unfounded. Just like Feanor's isn't totally unfounded, right? I mean, he's confident because he's in fact good, right? He's in fact powerful.
So have his confidence supported in some way here?
Well, yeah, because that's what's going to happen with Feanor, right? So
Okay.
if we have him coming across the tracks of the wolves, or maybe he discovers from afar the dens of the wolves or something, it would have to be pretty darn afar if we're going to have them catch up with him in time before he gets slaughtered. So maybe that's a non-starter. But at the least he could discover tracks or something, which he's then going to pursue, right? That would leave
So
it.
have that
sufficiently
happen at the beginning of the episode rather than the end of the episode, you're saying?
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of thinking. So, but now I realize that introduces the question of what happens to him at the end of the
Well, he
episode.
could deliberately go back to that place. He could deliberately go to the place where they had the argument and find the right way to go.
Well, here's my question. Why do we have him discovering that he's wrong already? Why should he have second thoughts before the end?
Yeah. Part part of the issue is that in this scene, he's by himself.
Yeah.
He has no one to talk to or to
And
explain himself to.
yes.
So what we really have is a scene of young Aragorn walking through the woods.
Yes.
Like, that is what is happening on screen.
Absolutely.
So if we have him find wolf tracks, then he can seem confident that, yep, I'm on the right track. I've done it right. Didn't need anybody else. Like, we can see that overconfidence in that scene.
Yeah.
But then where do we go with it? What does he do? So if there's a
Right.
den of wolves to discover that he's going to try and fight on his own or something, like, we can kind of get there. But
yeah,
it's tough. It's tough to have a character with no one to interact with.
Exactly. And that's another reason why I'm a little hesitant about having him have a moment of realizing that he might have been wrong, because that's also just going to be flat difficult to convey. Because you got nobody to apologize to or express. I mean, we can have him looking remorseful or looking uncertain. I'm not saying it's impossible to convey that, but for those two reasons, both, Marie, from the point of view that you're talking about how just that it's challenging to do that, and I don't think it's essential. So it's a high degree of difficulty, and I don't think we gain much from it. I think that the death of Hamilcar, like realizing that he caused the death of Hamilcar essentially by his rashness and his choice, is enough of a moment for him to realize that he screwed it up, right, and that he was wrong.
What if he finds tracks at the beginning of the episode and sees like and comes to the top of a box canyon with like wolf dens below,
right,
at the end? And he smiles because he thinks he's succeeded here.
Right.
Exactly. Now we're going to find out in another episode that he's bit off way more than he can chew.
Right. But it's going to be.
But for now, he thinks that he's succeeded.
Right. I like that. I get my concern is time. If we have, Eladon Elro here and Halberud catch up with Hamilcar. Hamilcar has his moment. Then they catch up with Aragorn. Or then he catches up, Hamilcar catches up with Aragorn, and all of that happens while he's getting down from the canyon to the den. Like,
no, it happens while he's tracking the wolves down.
Right. So we're going backwards in time, but
essentially, yeah, because we're going to go back to like the moment when we're kind of going to go back to before, like Hamilcar is just is just being caught up with.
We could split those up.
What's that?
We could split those up. We could have Aragorn discover the tracks at the beginning, and then have a Hamilcar scene at the end where he, like maybe where the elders catch up with him, and then we.
Well, yeah, but that doesn't. It basically like abandons one thread.
Yeah.
And starts a new one.
But otherwise, we're jumping around chronologically between the threads, which is...
It's a question of whether it's important to keep the frame snippets chronological or whether to keep the characters thematically in one episode, because you only get these brief little glimpses.
Well, that's it.
I think that if the elders are catching up with Hamilcar right when he's abandoned, and we see him in the same place where we last saw him abandoned, that step back in time shouldn't be too confusing, because he's the same guy in the same place. It might look a little silly that he hasn't moved since the last time we saw him.
Well, that's it. I mean, I think I would have to assume that time has passed.
Well, if we go back to the moment that Aragorn left him, right? Even if we see Aragorn leaving him, now from his point of view. Like if in the original shots have Aragorn looking down at him, in this shot we have Hamilcar looking up at Aragorn as Aragorn's leaving, in the final moment as Aragorn's leaving, and then have him turn away, and we just do like a kind of time moves bit where he's walking away. He's trying to find a way past on his own, and then they come up on him in that scene. It'll look like it'll be obvious that we're going back in time. But also obvious that he just wasn't just standing there.
Yeah.
Am I Am I making?
No, I'm
say
getting
clear?
it. The thing that I'm kind of thinking through here is I'm trying to imagine how this would come off under these circumstances. If the whole episodes were about them, you can taking
you have more options that way.
taking one thread through one episode and then in the next episode stepping backwards in time and pursuing the thread. Like, that's a thing you can do when we're only getting 30 to 60 seconds of them at the beginning and end of each episode. It's harder.
It's several minutes.
Okay.
We're talking about like 4 to 5 minutes.
Maybe. No, but it wouldn't.
In this episode, they're probably shorter scenes.
They're probably shorter scenes.
No dialogue, and you can only follow a guy for so long.
But in the next episode, we can.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we can have a 4-minute sequence at the beginning of the next epison
Yeah.
To establish what's happening.
Yeah, no, when we get dialogue with Halberud and everything. Yeah, no, absolutely. Okay. Well, I won't worry about that over much right now then. But my main thing was about when the moment of realization
understood.
for Estelle comes. So.
Yes. Okay. We can definitely move that out of episode 9. No problem.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. All right. Hey, I have an idea. Let's talk about episode 10. Now, let me make this perfectly clear.
Doing well.
Let me make this. I know that this seems like we're making horrible progress, but however, this is the thing that I would like to point out. We have laid the groundwork for several future episodes. So watch the efficiency now. We're going to be so much faster from here on. Okay.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So, episode 10. Which focuses on the attack by Gothmog on the Feanorian camp, right? And we end up with the near fatal wounding of Feanor, right, at the end of this episode. But okay, right. Zach says I say that every session, but it's almost always true. So okay, hang on. So we've got the attack on the camp. We've got Huan being awesome, and the establishment of his fearsome reputation as a wolf killer. Just absolutely love that. We have Feanor's wounding and rescue. Right, that was another thing. No, wait, the rescue's at the beginning of the next episode. Right, we just have him getting stabbed. Okay, fine. Does Gothmog stab him?
Of course.
Yeah, Gothmog's the one who kills him. Okay.
He deserves no less. We're hilariously sidelining him at the end of this season.
Yes. Well, who, Gothmog, you mean?
No, Feanor.
Feanor. Oh yeah. I mean, it's true actually. I was really kind of thinking about that. I wonder what like a real Hollywood studio would do with this. I mean, like, would they be willing to kill off Feanor right away, like after the first battle in Middle Earth?
They would end the series. They would end the season with Feanor's death.
Well, at the very least. But I mean, would they even do it? I mean, wouldn't they want Feanor to survive? It's like, he's your protagonist, right? I mean, he's been he's like sort of pro/anti-protagonist, but he's the main character, right? I mean, he's the central figure at the very least.
It's certainly an unusual choice to do it this way.
Yeah.
I think that most readers have that reaction in the book, though, the way Tolkien did it, of like, oh my gosh, Feanor's dead already. We just got to Middle Earth.
Bam, just like, okay.
Yeah. So I think we've recreated that shock in the viewer of, this was not where I expected this to go.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, I do really enjoy the kind of meta-narrative of us telling Feanor, no, you are not the most important person in this story.
Yeah, right. No, exactly. That's cool. But no, I agree. I mean, the death of Feanor, like, it's like right up there with the death of Ahab at the end of Moby Dick, as far as like, I mean, in fact, it's a lot like that. Like the central protagonist who built himself up as I am the mighty one, and I will, I would smite the sun if it offended me, says Captain Ahab, and then like in the end it's just like whoop. I mean, it's not even a fight, it's just over. and
26 pages.
And he dies instantly. And it's the same thing with Fëanor. Like, all the things, like his defiance at the doom of Mandos, and his like, I will dare anything, and now I am here to like rain my vengeance down upon dead, like done, over, right at the very beginning. And that's anyway, yeah. So it's kind of like I said, I kind of wonder if a real Hollywood production doing this would actually be willing to go through with it. I mean, I'm kind of imagining presenting the outline, like a basic outline of the story, to a real Hollywood studio, and then being like, wait, no, seriously? He dies now? No way. We're not doing that.
You can sometimes get away with things if you've had more seasons of a show.
Right.
So I feel like if this were season 18,
right,
the studio would totally be like, yeah, do whatever you want, guys. It's fine.
Right.
Season 3, you're right. It's a harder sell.
Yeah.
It's not season 1, at least. In season 1, you absolutely cannot do this on a show because you can't throw the viewers that kind of curveball and expect them to accept it.
Right.
Game of Thrones, again, massively popular show. Ned Stark dead at the end of the first season. It's like, it's not that unheard of.
Yes, but not dead several episodes before in a beginning of the episode context, so let's just write his death out of there. Like, you can't just quietly write Ned Stark out of your show.
Yeah, absolutely. No, like, what if
that was at least a climactic moment. Yeah.
If we were making the show on the fly, like a lot of shows are written, and we did this, people would think that we were mad at Richard Armitage.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. When an actor gets written out of a show abruptly and in an ignoble way,
right,
it definitely looks like, oh, you asked for more money, didn't you?
Yeah,
like
exactly.
We're essentially putting him on a bus. Is the TV tropes term?
Right. Yeah.
Like, oh yeah, that guy doesn't work here anymore.
Yeah, I could totally imagine. Like if people didn't have access to the Silmarillion itself, and it's totally what it would look like if they didn't know that it came from the text. Yeah, because even in its way, like, I don't want to get into talking about it too much, but actually, the Ned Stark thing is to me a sort of a false parallel. I mean, it's surprising that they go through with the execution, but it's like everything builds up to that. I mean, even in the book, everything builds up to that. You know, he's about to undertake this major coup, and then it reverses on him, and he dies. Right, so it's unexpected. It's like. You might be expecting him to get rescued or just, something, his sentence commuted or something. The fact they go through with the beheading is in fact shocking. But this is more like, if Ned Stark had died in a skirmish on the way to the city, I mean, like that's anyway. Yeah. Anyhow. Okay. All right. Sorry. So we've got Fëanor wounded, and as you say, we've got a lot of unresolved tension here at the end, and we do get a Wenwë's death in this episode, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Yes.
All right. Good. So let's start off talking about we've just been talking about Fëanor, so let's carry on talking about Fëanor. We have this is where we get the Amros issues. We didn't really get much of the Fëanorians. We didn't get any of the Fëanorians in episode 9, right? We stayed away from the Fëanorians in episode 9, mostly.
Because we didn't have a lot of time for them. So basically what we did was we just had visits with Celegorm scouting things out, and we kind of got political situation through his conversations with Huan.
Right. Exactly. And I love that idea, by the way. So your concept is that Celegorm can talk to Huan, but we don't understand him or get him. So it's like talking to Chewbacca or R2-D2, right? That's brilliant. I love that. I think that's a great way to convey it, because I mean, it's when Huan speaks, like the 3 times in which Huan speaks with words, it would be like all of a sudden if Chewbacca spoke in English, that'd be shocking, right? I mean, it would be alarming if all of a sudden that happened, and not like like he's learning English, right? But like all of a sudden he speaks fluently in English. That would be shocking. So yeah, I like that. I think that's a great concept. Anyway, okay. So back in Mithrim, we have a lot of talk, and what we're getting from the talk is primarily Amros being angry. And we see Kurufin we're establishing Kurufin here as the manipulative one who is trying to further his father's ends, right?
Yes, he's the schemer, and we see that play out now.
We see, Kurufin as schemer and as the clear heir of his father when it comes to character and purposes, right? The natural one, right? So, okay.
Feanor's spiritual successor.
Yeah, exactly. Right. That's though different in his approach, right? Because he's less forceful than Feanor. We don't see him ever trying to overwhelm anybody. He's the kind of the behind the scenes manipulator. But yes, exactly. Okay. I want to talk for a second about the Feanorians' response to the orcs when they first see them coming in, because of course they don't have any context. Even what's his name? Círdan has more context because at least Celeborn is there, so Celeborn can convey, like the story of like Mablung's encounter with the orcs, so they know of the orcs, even though Círdan won't ever have seen them either, right?
Celeborn's seen them.
Celeborn has seen them,
right? Yeah,
but Círdan has not. Círdan has only seen wolves.
Right, exactly. So even when they're looking at the burned ships and they're saying, "Oh, this looks like orc work," they know way more. Even Círdan, who's never seen one before, knows more about orcs than the Feanorians do, right? Who
correct?
No
it's
concept
surprise.
about this at all. So yeah,
it's a surprise to them. Yeah.
So we have now. Obviously, we're not in a situation like Mablung where we had this first contact between the races goes awry situation, right, where they discover the orcs. That's not here. They're just being attacked. Their camp is being overrun by these frightening looking things. I was interested in your idea that their first reaction is that these are like spiritual beings of some, like they're demons of some kind, right? That these are like demons of Morgoth. Which makes a lot of sense because they wouldn't know that he had like mortal servants, right?
Right.
Why would they think that? Where would those come from even?
And one of the things that I thought of while we were setting this scene up was that bit. Have you ever seen the 13th Warrior?
Mm-mm. It's on my list, but I haven't seen it. I know. And sorry. It's on my list.
It's not a great work of cinema, but it's a fun movie, and it's related to Beowulf.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. That's why it's on my list.
Yeah. It takes some creative license, obviously, but part of the plot line in that film is that they originally think that the villains they're facing are monsters or demons or supernatural creatures, and then at some point they recognize that their enemy is actually a group of people. Yes. So they're still scary and monsters, but they're just humans who can be killed like any other human.
Right. What the protagonist character kills one of them and realizes that he's killed them, and he starts repeating over and over again, "It's a man. It's a man. It's a man," and then he just lays into like a number of them. So like that's kind of what for Kurufin to kind of have a moment like that.
Right.
Hey, we can kill these things. Let's do it.
We can kill these things, and it's not only not that hard to kill these things, but it's also kind of satisfying to kill these things. Yeah.
Because we've already shown the tragedy of the kinslaying.
Yes.
This battle is not a tragedy. What's happening in this battle is it is fun to kill orcs, and let's do a lot of that.
Right. Yeah, exactly. It's yes. Yeah. No,
it's
I like that. I like that. Yeah, exactly. Now, Brianna was just asking, is this the part of the podcast where we discuss if orcs have elf souls? No, this is not that part of the podcast. But let us
The Feanorians certainly don't think about that question at
They're
this
certainly
time.
not thinking about this question. No.
They do not consider the metaphysical nature of orcs. They just recognize that orcs are killable, and then they kill them.
But I will say this, Brianna. This is the time in this podcast when we think about at what point in this podcast will we think about that.
And we kind of already have much earlier.
Some. Yeah. But we have to think about... But what we haven't thought about is when the elves are going to think about this. Right.
Elrond presumably at some point has sat down and given this question some thought by the time we reach him in the Third Age.
You got to think so.
At this point in the game, nobody has. So at what point do you have that transition? Who decides to ask the philosophical questions?
I gotta think as soon as we're like set up and, at the very latest, by the time the Leaguer is in place in season 4, somebody's got to be asking the question like, okay, hang on, what the heck are these orcs anyway? Where did they come from? This
sounds like a question that would be answered in the same conversation where Finrod is talking metaphysical things with a human person.
Like Indra or somebody.
Yeah.
Which is not now.
Yeah. No, because when the... Okay. That's what the elves think. That's got to be what the elves think, right? When the elves take time to think about this, they know there was going to be another race coming, right? They have to think these are the men, right? This is it. These are the followers. Melkor has taken them and corrupted them and set them against us.
No.
That's got to be. What else would they think, right? They can't suspect the truth, right? That these are derived from elves, right? So that's obvious because they knew that there was going to be another race, and here's another race, right? And it's like not anything like they were kind of led to believe. But it
probably comes out eventually, like because the orcs probably know.
It totally will. And in fact, when Finrod meets the men, then the discussion is going to begin in earnest. We're like, okay, no, wait, those are the men. So
you know what? I bet you men have had conversations, like just conversational conversations with orcs at some point.
I wonder.
The elves really haven't.
And did the men think the same thing about the orcs? That the orcs were the older race that came before them.
Right. The elves. Yeah. The men thought the orcs were elves.
The men thought the orcs were exactly. Yeah. No, I mean that makes all kinds of sense. Oh yeah. Now, I mean, obviously this is a season 4 question, but but I've got to think it can't be. They've got to start asking the question almost right. I mean, not immediately. We're still in crisis mode, still at the very beginning of season 4. But once things get out of crisis mode, they have to start asking the question right away.
Yes.
Who the heck are these creatures anyway, and why are we, what's going on here? So yeah, season 4. Zach, as Zach points out, there's always room in season 4 because I agree. There's we can do there's barely anything in season 4, so we've got to fill up the.
And with the introduction of Glaurung, of course, we have plenty of room in season 4.
Yeah, we've got to fill up the vast empty spaces of season 4. So yeah, totally, we'll have time there. Yeah, excellent. Okay, sorry, very good. So then we get Noldor slaughtering orcs, and we get them, right? We show them that they are way different and way... the difference between even the Grey Elves and the Noldor should be, extreme. We should have, if the... if
Feanor has a trained army.
Yeah, exactly. So... if we have on screen like the
no losses.
Yeah, the green elves are like unarmed, like scattershot militia who don't really hold together and don't have any idea what to do. The gray elves have armor and they have a clear leader whom they're following, but they're not highly coordinated. The Noldor should be like, forming like, they could be even, doing really sophisticated things like the Roman turtle and like, stuff like that, I think we're
gonna get there. We had Feanor training his men in phalanx warfare back in Formenos, which is what we're kind of seeing here. That's gonna break obviously because they're gonna chase these guys. But in the opening segments of this that's what we're going to see.
Right. Yep. No, I like it. That makes all kinds of sense. So, and then Feanor confronts Gothmog and 2 other Balrogs. How well does he do?
He
And
stays
for
on
how
his
long?
feet, which is impressive. I don't think he wounds the Balrogs, though.
It's not an inconsequential threat.
Yeah. They take him
Like,
seriously, but he's not.
Well, they don't initially,
Yeah.
but they do afterwards, and this is part of the reason why they pull back, because for whatever they know, this is an army of several thousand of that guy, right? That's rushing toward us. Maybe we might, because like you gotta believe that the Feanorian army could take 2 to 3 Balrogs. They have to be able to. There's no way that the Balrogs
Yeah.
would walk away from that.
Probably. Yes.
We're never going to put Balrogs in a
We're never gonna
situation
put
where we
Balrogs
see them
in that
overwhelmed by
situation.
an army.
Yeah.
But
Right.
but the reason they're not in that situation is because they leave.
Right.
They're smart enough to realize this is not a good place to stand.
How many total Balrogs do we decide? 7?
I think
9?
7 to 9.
7 or 9?
They're not alive at this time.
They're what? How would you say?
There are 9 left.
9 left at
Alive
this time.
at
9 alive at this time.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
And Morgoth always keeps 2 in his throne room.
Right. He keeps 2 in his throne room. Well, I guess we can
So
always
there's
kill
7,
any
yeah.
number of them in the
War of Wrath.
War of Wrath. Yeah. So it doesn't really and because
Oh, yeah, and we're going to have 2 survive
2
after
survive.
the War of Wrath. The Durrance Bane and then one other unknown Balrog who just disappears into Middle-earth history.
For role-playing game masters to
Exactly.
play
Yeah.
around
It's
with.
just handy to have a spare Balrog just in case, because you never know when you'll need one.
Well, you know that somebody's going to write the RPG module to recapture the Palantir that Amrod lost.
Amrod lost. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So no, we do have to leave some quest lines open. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're right. Okay, good point. So if there are 9, we need to kill off 7. Glorfindel, Icthelion. Okay, that's 2.
That leaves us 5 for the War of Wrath, which, quite honestly, I don't want to reduce the big deal that those Balrog deaths are in Gondolin, because it's the only time it happens.
Yeah. Okay. Well,
We don't want to kill a Balrog here, certainly.
No. We definitely don't want to kill a Balrog here. Having Feanor take one down would be because that would make his death, in some sense, everybody who kills a Balrog dies, but dies self-sacrificially, right? I mean, there's an element of like you are giving your life for this. We don't want to have any element of self-sacrifice in Feanor's death.
Right.
So that's clearly we can't have that. Okay. Anyway, all right. That's fine. So, but I guess the brunt of my primary question there was, how anticlimactic do we have Feanor's conflict with the Balrogs?
It's a fight. I would say it's a fight. Because
he's on his feet the whole time. He doesn't go down.
Right. Yeah. Because it's a little bit tempting, for Feanor to do a Captain Ahab moment, right? For Feanor to come striding in, feeling like the earth shakes under his feet, and standing there in defiance, and then just to have the Balrogs just swat him. Yeah, exactly. That's tempting, but I think that's a temptation we should resist. This is Feanor's last moment.
Dolphin can stand up to Morgoth.
Yeah.
For any length of time at all, then Feanor can stand up to these guys for a bit.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. We do need to maintain the scale, and we don't want to undermine the fact that Feanor is in fact the greatest, strongest, most powerful of all the elves ever. So, no matter, Fingolfin is awesome, but Feanor was greater than he. So if he goes down too easily, even against 3 Balrogs, it is going to seem like he was a wimp. So, and Marielle, you're right. They're also not fighting all out. They're trying to capture him alive. So that also would impact it. We could even have him taunt them for that, right? Saying like that they're not, you know, he can tell they're not trying to, you know, they're not really trying to kill him. Perhaps
They do wound him seriously, obviously, though. So he has to get stabbed and or hit with fiery whips a few times. Like,
yeah,
he's got to be clearly hurt while still fighting.
They're going to be deploying the whips almost exclusively, right? Because they're trying to capture him.
Okay.
So
yeah. But when it turns out that he's too quick, or that he's able to because he's the spirit of fire. He's probably relatively resistant to fire whips. He has resistance 10 to fire whips.
Exactly. If he's gonna get stabbed, he has to provoke being stabbed. Like somebody's getting in trouble for stabbing Feanor, right? Because he's not meant to get stabbed. So he has to push them to the point where they have to fight with their swords to defend themselves, essentially.
Right. So the Balrogs are in danger in this battle, but never seriously wounded, never taken down, and they leave the field of battle before that could happen. Feanor is mortally wounded, but never falls until the very end of this episode.
Too much. I suppose we couldn't have Feanor lop off one of their whip hands.
Losing a hand.
That's really hard to do to a human. It's not that easy to chop off someone's hand, despite what the movies tell you.
I know, but of course, you know, Marie. I'm sure Marie sees right away where I'm going with this, right? Setting up a further step of the progression that would lead from Feanor to Hurin to Meriadoc, right? And the chopping off of hands is one of the primary things that they all have in common as they're being captured and overwhelmed by superior numbers. So that's one point by itself that I think I would kind of like. I mean, it does mean that we would have a Balrog that we'd have to nickname Stumpy from now on. But I think they could manage, or he maybe even get healed. Like Morgoth could give him a new hand.
Could he strike the whip hand of somebody to the point where they have to drop it, which is what causes it to escalate to them drawing blades?
I understand the issue that a single slice through a hand requires a pretty impressive sword,
which Feanor has.
Which Feanor has. Right. So it's like, if you think about samurai movies with katanas, you can totally take a guy's hand off.
You can totally take a guy's hand off. Yeah.
That's fine. So I'm okay with the idea of a Balrog losing a hand here, and even it being a permanent injury, because they can't shapeshift anymore, so there shouldn't be an easy way to grow that back.
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree. We don't want to like make the sense that they're like salamanders.
I mean, that could be the one Glorfindel kills later or something if we need to, but
it could even be Gothmog for that matter.
No, Gothmog has to be strong warrior through the rest of the first stage. We can't maim him here.
Exactly. But
Mavros becomes a stronger warrior after losing a hand.
Exactly.
He does, but he's Mithras, and that's special. We're not going to we're not going to show the story arc of the Balrog who
the training montage of the one-handed Balrog
and goes on to fight stronger and with a hotter fire than before.
It can't be Durin's Bane, because Durin's Bane clearly has both hands.
Of course not, but we've got 7 other Balrog.
We have several superfluous Balrogs. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, this is one of the dudes. This would just become one of the dudes who is killed in the War of Wrath. Though it would be kind of fun, wouldn't it, to like be able to make allusions back to this if like the Balrogs in Gondolin, right? And one of them are as the Balrogs are lording it around Gondolin, we have one of the Balrogs and then like we see the one with no hand. Yeah, yeah.
We take a metal hook with a spike on one end and jab it through his arm all the way up to the.
That's a brilliant idea. Yeah, I like that. Could we make his skin look all rubbery too? Could we manage that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Some scratches on his face.
Yeah. No, this is
you
brilliant.
guys.
Okay. Yeah. But anyway, so I'm just cutting off his hand because and then that Balrog is the one who stabs him because he doesn't have his whip anymore, right? So like, and he could be like really threatened, and he gets enraged because he's in pain because he got his hand cut off, and so he draws his sword, or he takes his sword with his other hand because it's his left hand, it's his whip hand that he got the cut off, and so he stabs Feanor with his sword because he's got no whip anymore and he's really ticked off, and he's the one who's going to get in trouble, right?
Yeah, I'm okay with all of that. I don't think that ruins any of our aura of how scary a Balrog is to fight, because they're gonna kill Feanor in the scene. So
yeah, it's okay. It's the one who gets his hand cut off who kills Feanor, right?
Right. So
rage.
And it happens not because they are incapable, but because they're holding back.
Yes.
Because they're not taken seriously.
Right. Exactly. It doesn't.
Which is always a mistake to not take Feanor seriously.
Right, exactly. And it does. See, yeah, Zach, that's what I was thinking too, that, it seems a little bit odd perhaps that it's not Gothmog who stabs Feanor, but again, the problem here, stabbing Feanor is a failure, right? I mean, like, that's doing it wrong. That's losing, in a sense, right? I mean, they've not lost the fight to Feanor, but they weren't supposed to kill him. They've lost.
The goal is to capture.
Yeah, they failed in their goal. And so if we have it not be Gothmog who does that, we're actually elevating, not diminishing him. He can be enraged at Stumpy, right, for stabbing Feanor. We could even show, and we can show his rage, Gothmog's rage, at the death of Feanor. The
Balrogs will not realize that Feanor has died here.
Right. Yeah.
They will not find out until the finale.
Yeah.
That Feanor is in fact dead.
Yeah. Right. No. Exactly. But but anyway, like, it was still obviously a bad move. Okay. Good. I like that. So we got Stumpy the Balrog, and I'm happy now. So let's go back.
And can Balrogs talk in battle? Is it okay if Balrogs have dialogue in this battle sequence? Obviously, Durnsbane's not going to talk in battle, but, like, can Gothmog or Stumpy say something?
Feanor just seems to make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
And
I'm okay with Gothmog having... What if only Gothmog
So Gothmog can have lines.
What if only Gothmog talks? Gothmog should be a Balrog of few words, right? He is not a loquacious Balrog. He can be taciturn and the other Balrogs silent. But, yeah. I mean, I think if we're going to have him being in a general sort of position, we need him to be able to speak. I mean, I think we don't want to have Balrogs waving semaphore flags or something. So we definitely need to have him speak. Okay, cool.
I just wanted to make sure you're okay with that before we...
Yeah, no, that's a great question. Right. That's a great question. Okay, so... brief at the Helcaraxa death scene of Elenwe. Love it. Turgon diving to try to rescue Elenwe. Turgon rescuing Idril, right? So we have the near death of little Idril, and Idril being saved, and Turgon having to be restrained from continuing to dive for Elenwe by Fingolfin. There's nothing I don't love about all that. That's really awesome.
Okay.
Was that the part that had you a little misty-eyed?
It was
that you're describing the other thing.
Yeah.
When I was describing that, I got a little choked up because I immediately started thinking of my father. Putting yourself in that position, all of a sudden it brings out all the feels.
Absolutely, yeah. No, definitely. It's it's a really powerful moment, and I love the way in which this. To some extent, Elenwe has to be kind of the face of all of the Noldor who die in the crossing of the Helcaraxa, right? I mean, I know that we get corpses in the next episode too, but she's the face, right, of all of them.
She's the main
Yeah. So, I thought that this worked really, really well in that role. So yeah, okay, I like that. That was so. I don't have anything else to say about the Helcaraxa stuff from this episode because efficiently I already talked about all that stuff in advance, so we're good. And then the last thing was the dwarf business, right? Yes, the dwarf business, which we've already pretty much talked about. So it's so here we get the dwarf, and the Weregild thing is just brilliant. Just a wonderful piece of excellent kind of cultural misapprehension. Another example of there being active cause for antagonism on both sides, and yet like innocent on both sides, just a failure to understand each other. We can, the way in which, again, I'm kind of hearing Gandalf in my head, or Aragorn rather. I'm thinking of Aragorn's line. Shall we now say, a curse upon the stiff necks of elves, right? Because both of them are being stiff-necked. Both of them are being, there's kind of failure. There's some kind of blindness and stubbornness on both sides, as neither one of them are really open to kind of understanding the point of view of each other. Except for Norn, right, who, as you say, really emerges as like the hero of the dwarves over the course of this season. What's Norn's destiny, by the way? We can't just drop him, can we?
He's going to die of old age off camera.
Oh man, well, but he's got to do something else if he's going to die of old age, right? When are we we got to get Norn back?
Okay,
we have to have.
In season 4, we can come up with a suitable send-off for him.
Yeah,
in this season, he's still alive and well, and ambassador to the Elves of Doriath.
He's got to accomplish something. There's got to be some role that Norn has. Oops, sorry, what was that? Oh.
The guy has had an amazingly full life for somebody who thought he was just going to be a surveyor for the logging road.
That's right. His career really took off in some unexpected ways. That's right. I mean,
that's essentially like so I work at a car dealership, and I help people. I basically help people get their cars fixed, essentially.
Right.
It would essentially be somebody comes in with a problem with their car, and I, in order to fix it, come up with a concept that changes quantum physics.
Right, exactly. Or again, you end up becoming the ambassador to a foreign nation as a result of this one particular vehicular transaction. Yeah, exactly.
Yes, of course. That happens all the time.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. Standard. Just a day in the life, I'm sure. But no, that's great. Norn is the people's hero. So we have to get Norn back in season 4. We can't just drop him. That has to happen. So just note for future. Now, how are we resolving this? Where do we go with? So no, we don't hear, because the theme of episode 10 is that nothing gets resolved ever. Right. So
yes.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that essentially, in order to tie everything together in a way that made sense, without starting up new plot lines.
Right.
The easiest way to do it was to tie it all together with people being held back in different circumstances.
Yeah. Right. Yes. And ending with the shot of Feanor's face when he realizes he's failed. I like that. Okay. Good. Do I dare start the next episode? If I only get through 2. Oh man.
It's your call. I don't know what your thoughts were on episode 11 to know if it was something you could just real quickly rattle off.
No, I'm sure episode 11 was fine. What was episode 11 again? Okay, now hang on. We'll do this. Let's see. All right. Here we go. All right. So, Oh yeah, no problem. Oh, this is the sun and moon. Yeah, no, this is going to be trivial. So, okay, right. So we've got the resolving of the cliffhangers, the last call of the Valar, right? Yeah. The introduction of the spider threat, but we don't do the girdle in this episode, right? That's episode 12.
Correct. I realize it's not what you guys originally asked for, but
yeah, right. That
we
was the
wanted
one
to do
where
it this way.
I have to say, like, I was totally in kind of wait and see mode on that. Like I did, but it's fine. Like the outlines, I'm fine with the way the outlines go. Mostly because you guys have stretched out the spider attack on Menegroth a little bit more than I had originally been thinking. So like having the spiders progressively like working deeper and deeper in and you know, it looked like Menegroth is on the verge of falling. I had been originally imagining the establishment of the girdle as being something that happened like outside Menegroth as the spiders were converging. So by kind of pushing that forward a little bit, then that made that easier. So instead of very efficiently discussing episode 11, I think what I'm going to do is just talk about episode 12 randomly instead, because that's the path of efficiency. Very good. Yeah. So anything quick that you guys wanted to emphasize or ask about in episode 11?
Just a quick note on the spider thing. One thing that we noticed was that if we weren't careful, we were basically going, like, the Doriath plot line was going to drop out of the story.
Yeah.
And since we've already had a few issues with that in the season where you know, the plots aren't naturally rising and falling together like you'd really want, we wanted to kind of push that out a little bit so that the storylines kind of came to a resolution around the same time.
Right. Yeah.
It does kind of make the finale plot line for Doriath a little bit anticlimactic by comparison.
Significantly.
The only way to avoid that was to end the season with Feanor's death, which would have kind of lined everything back up.
Right.
But it's okay. We just found ways to work within the framework as it existed.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I think it's fine. I think it works. As I say, I didn't end up objecting to the stretching out at all. And the thing that I really liked, and I thought you guys conveyed really well, I love how like unbeatable you make the spiders, right? You know, that this is really, I love how this serves to vindicate Sauron, right? Sauron, it's a wonderful moment of like having your cake and eating it too, right? Where on the one hand we can establish Sauron as super competent villain, and yet he loses, right? Not because he fails. Yeah.
He's not there. Like he has all of these, and he has all these fail safes to kind of, even though he's not there, he still almost wins.
Yes. Yes. Exactly, and his stratagem about the spiders, you know, is like totally. It works out beautifully, and I love the way in which how you guys had Thingol's army being like on the verge of being destroyed by the spiders as they were, you know, so here's the triumphant army returning like, hey, we defeated the orc army almost all by ourselves against all the odds, and we like heroically saved the remnant of the green elves and prevented their total destruction, and we got no help from the dwarves, but turns out we didn't need it because we were that awesome. And then like, and hooray, we're home triumphantly, and then wham, spiders, and it looks like they're gonna get completely destroyed until the girdle snaps in. I love that. I mean, I think that's that works really well.
Yeah, and there's no doubt in my mind that as we have this set up, that if Sauron had not been pulled back to the north, that the south probably would have been overrun.
Yes.
So the Noldor actually did accomplish something
exactly
by showing up.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's because Sauron could have, maybe, Sauron could have prevented,
Personally
counteracted. Yeah, I mean, like the idea of like a song battle between Melian and Sauron is interesting, right? I mean, I don't think we can't have it be like Sauron could just overcome Melian any time, or else why doesn't he, right? I mean,
Yeah.
he'll have a chance later on to come and take down the girdle after it's already established, and he won't. So presumably he can't. But anyway, no. I agree.
The fact that Luthien can take on Sauron in a song battle suggests that Melian probably would beat Sauron.
Yeah.
But they never fight it out, so we never see that. And the closest we get is by having both of them demonstrate their powers next to each other, but never against each other.
And we're gonna have was I reading this? Like, we get like no spiders are harmed during the course of this battle. So like the weapons of the Sindar are pretty much not seriously. Yeah.
Like they cut off a few claws, or maybe stab an eye out or something.
I really like this because, of course, like we're gonna have one of the things, of course, that we're doing here is setting up the journey of Beren. Right, when Beren travels through where the spiders live, it's gonna be a really big deal, not just because they're obviously big and intrinsically scary, but because we will have established how virtually impossible they are to kill.
And we're going to send Aradel through that valley, and we're going to send the people of Haleth through that valley. Like, we will have opportunities for some very interesting encounters with spiders.
Yes.
In season 4 or 5.
Yeah.
If we saw Sheila shrugging things off here,
yes,
like for the person who has watched this entire series, that's going to be huge when Sam's facing her by himself.
Yes, big payoff for Sam. And also, of course, we have to remember that Sam's sting, right, the weapon with which Sam wounds Shelob, is a Noldor weapon, right? It's
from Gondolin, yes.
From Gondolin, exactly.
Who's famous for making bane weapons against spiders,
and dragons,
against
and goblins,
and orcs.
Yeah, exactly. Turgon's R&D department is fairly active too.
Yeah, Gondolin is all about the magic swords.
Exactly, yeah, and magic gems and all kinds of things. Yeah, exactly. Thinking of the
magic spiky helmets.
Magic spiky helmets. Yeah, exactly.
Oh, go magic
helmet. Yeah. Of course, now I have that Bugs Bunny song in my head, or rather Elmer Fudd singing, about the magic helmet. But anyway, sorry. Okay, yes. So, agreed. Yeah. So spiders, I really liked the uselessness of the elvish weapons against them, and now of course, no, it's fine. It's all good. I mean, we do have to be careful because if the spiders are basically inviolate in battle, then they're going to be like the people of Haleth are not going to be able to fight them off because. But anyway, we can handle that later on. That's obviously a later issue. Brianna says, I will never stop believing that Sting was young Earendil's sword. Oh, we'll have opportunities, Brianna. We'll definitely have opportunities for... Sting has to feature, obviously. I mean, we can't not have Sting in Gondolin. So, yes. There's...
Yeah, the thought was to make it kind of a standard, like, sidearm that lots of elves in Gondolin have. So we'll see the model of Sting all over the place.
Right. Yeah, that's actually kind of cool. Yeah, to have it.
All the door guards have to have that thing because you never know when giant spiders could attack the door.
That's right.
It's the Gondolin version of a K-bar.
Right.
More or less.
Anyway.
I like it. Okay, sorry, but anyway, this is efficiency. So, so love the spiders, love that's all good. So, and we have Dairon with his music driving them back, sort of driving them back with his music, setting that up. That's all good. The grinding ice stuff. This is
This is just the Aurora happening.
The Aurora happening, right?
So we're not showing the
thing to do so that it's not weird that he winds up carrying the moon.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. Yes. Exactly. So we have So the only reaction you're getting are people looking up at it in wonder. So we're not going to talk about the aurora at all, right?
I mean,
we're setting up that, like, Omo explicitly says that it's to give them hope,
Yeah,
and so their reactions are going to tell us that
right,
that's happening.
right. Okay. Okay. We may want to bring it up explicitly in the discussions that they have in episode 12, but we'll worry about that later. Okay, fine, good. Feanor's sons. So, this is whom are we quoting?
That's me. I did not notice that in there that way. I apologize.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no
so
worries.
basically, that was just me kind of getting misty-eyed, thinking about, like, the last really heroic moment for all the sons of Feanor together,
Yes.
and making that suitably epic. You know, kind of coming in and out of focus. You know, as they're rescuing their father.
Yes.
You know, like, just I wanted to catch that kind of desperate, gritty kind of situation.
Yes.
Where they're fleeing themselves into battle completely self-sacrificially. Like, they're going to come out of this with cuts all over the place.
And thinking of this is, we can get some payoff from the kind of tensions among the Feanorians that we had leading up to this, right? Like, I'm thinking Mithros leads the charge, right? Mithros, who had beef with his dad and who was already resistant and had stood aside at the burning of the ships, yet he sees Feanor stabbed. But, they're coming up. They've got to be already charging up to help him when he's fighting with the Balrog. So they see Stumpy stab Feanor in the belly, and so we've got to get Mithros and his reaction to that, and him charging up to rescue his dad. So
and Emros too.
Yeah, and Emros too, absolutely.
Like, for a minute, that's all that matters.
Yeah,
all that matters is saving Dad.
I'm even imagining Emros being the one to physically carry him off the battlefield, maybe. That image of Amros holding Feanor in his arms, actually, I kind of like, but anyway, they've got to come in now. We've still got to be cautious about this because we can't just beat off the Balrogs, and they're not just going to run, So I've got to think that what happens is, because on the one hand, right, Stumpy stabbed Feanor, and that's not what was supposed to happen, so Gothmog's mad about that. But obviously, he's now down, so now the time is to now is the time for them to, like, swoop in, pick him up, and go away, right? So they're on the cusp of hauling Feanor's still, breathing body back to Morgoth fast before he kicks it, right? And that's what is interrupted by Feanor's sons. So Mithros comes in and, and beats off Stumpy, who's standing there, but I've got to think, they're not going to, the Balrogs are not going to stop pushing. They're not going to run away. They're not going to be afraid. They're not going to back off. They're going to be like, no, like, we almost had him. Like, we've got to get him now. We still have to take him. So I got to think they have to, the Sons of Feanor have to come in and push them back, the three Balrogs. But the rest, many more of the Feanorians have to sweep in.
There's a whole
absolutely.
army. Yeah.
Like, basically, Feanor is the first one through, right? And because he's doing the, like, Aragorn on the battlefield thing where nobody wants to even get in his face at all.
Right.
Like, it's explicitly said that one of the main reasons why Aragorn is unhurt in the Battle of Pelennor Fields is because none of the orcs, anybody that sees him wants nothing to do with him.
Right.
So essentially, that's what's happening there.
Right.
So he's the first one through. The Sons of Feanor are essentially, a minute at the most behind him.
Right.
Like, they're a fight scene behind him.
Right.
So if the Sons of Feanor can get out there and essentially they're shielding Feanor with their own bodies, like Myveros comes out and gets in Stumpy's grill, which is enough to get them to pull back a little bit, and the other Sons of Feanor get to him and interpose themselves between him and the Balrogs, and the rest of the army is essentially breaking through at that moment.
Yeah.
The orcs are beginning to break and run, and so the Balrogs, do the math and go, no.
Well, and they've got us right. I'm thinking one more step. That is because the problem is the Sons of Feanor have to not only be able to come in and drag Feanor away before he can get either taken or chopped up by Balrogs, but they also have to none of them die in doing that.
Right.
Which is tricky. So I'm thinking how that would have to happen. Again, they push them back. Then, as you say, the rest of the army is breaking in. The other, no-name Noldor soldiers would then also sweep in around the Sons of Feanor and interpose, and so they would interpose themselves between the Balrogs and the Sons of Feanor, and a bunch of them could be killed, right? Because Gothmog's first impulse is going to be like, I can still see him, he's right there. This is going bad. Like, it was already going badly enough that Stumpy stabbed him. Now we're not even going to have a body to take back to him. Like, come on, like we have got. So they're going to be like, hacking and slashing and trying to get to Feanor, and the rest of the Feanorians will push, and the Sons of Feanor will pull him back. And then afterwards, once as the orcs then, go around them and it's clear that Feanor is vanished back into the camp, then Gothmog will, in great frustration, call the retreat at that point, I would think. But,
okay.
Yeah.
That's a good way to make it not look like the Balrogs just run away. As soon
exactly.
As the elves show up.
Yeah, they're not going to. We can't make it look like they're scared because they're not scared, nor that they're totally overpowered because they're not totally overpowered. But as you said, if we had a situation where even 3 Balrogs are totally surrounded by a Noldor army, they would die eventually, even though they would take a lot of them with them. So,
honestly, I'm not sure what the over/under is on 2.5 Balrogs versus the 7 Sons of Feanor, to be perfectly honest.
Right.
I'm not sure that that's a given situation to start with.
Right. Right. Well, 6. We killed one already. Yeah.
So they outnumber them by 12 to 5 hands.
Right, exactly.
Oh, no.
Just over 2 to 1. Yeah, exactly. Okay, no, that's good. Okay, so I'm cool with that. Last thing is the making of the sun and moon, which is good. I like how you guys handled that. Like, let's do it totally non-visually. We'll just hand the fruit and the flower to the people, and then, like, light comes and we don't see them anymore, and then like the sun rises. Like, that's fine. I like the let's not build a mythological chariot of the sun or anything like that. Like we're not going to have a huge flower that we're carrying around and dropping.
Passion about this point about what the size would be, but at the end of the day, and I said this a bunch of times, I said it doesn't matter. It does not matter what size. I don't care if it's the size of a beach ball. I don't care if it's the size of a house. Right. It's not. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's not to scale. Yeah. So clearly,
it's not. It's obviously magic.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
Yeah. So this is definitely an artistic representation, and therefore it would be up to the artist to convey the idea of sun through a fruit or a flower, not to actually construct a vessel that is believably the sun or the moon.
Yeah, no, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. By the way, Rickle Richard suggests we're setting up an obvious spin-off show called 2.5 Balrogs. But anyway, I totally agree. So basically taking that, just kind of embracing that whole, this is an abstract artistic representation of a mythological thing, and we're just, going to do it with light and just suggest, we just draw the connection, right? This person plus this thing like fruit or flower is the sun and moon, right? But we're not going to show like the physical transition and because as you say, you can't do that. So no, it's good. I like that. The grief and hope of the making of the sun and moon, is nice. I mean, I think that all works really well.
I don't know if you recognize the mirror image of this with the creation of the trees.
Yeah.
Because, obviously this was 2 years ago that we talked about that. But in this case, it's Yavanna.
Yes.
Demonstrating Nienna.
Yes. Yeah. No, I like that. That's very good. I thought that was really neat. Okay. Yeah. No, good. I thought the Valinorian stuff was handled really well. Yeah, good. Okay, so there'll be a few odds and ends from this episode. Maybe that we'll pick up next time, but we're mostly good with it. Okay, but I'm over time, so we should stop now. But see, look at that. We got more than halfway through, which is totally fine. So we may need another episode to finish this up, which is, I know, like, that's going to be a huge shock to everybody. Just like it's like the death of Captain Ahab, the unexpected death of Fëanor, the fact that we didn't finish all 5 episodes in one session here today. Like, those are all really kind of on a par. But that's fine. So let's talk about when that next session will be, where we will finish this up and maybe even have some time to start on some of our creative discussion, or the discussion of other people's creative work and suggestions.
The wholly uncreative endeavor of scripting out.
Exactly. Right.
Yes.
Yeah. True. Is gonna be so we're gonna have to have our session next week. So because I'm traveling, so time wise, yeah. So I'm traveling on the 15th. Excuse me, sorry. I'm traveling on the 15th, and then the week after that is Mythmoot. So I will be unavailable for the 2 middle weeks of June. So we're gonna have to have our next session next Friday the 8th, and then the following session will be back on the old schedule. So it'll be 3 weeks after that on the 29th of June. So the casting nominations, don't forget casting nominations are still ongoing. In the next session on June 8th, we will announce the beginning of voting for casting. When we're going to be closing nominations and beginning the voting process. So continue the nomination process as we move through there. But good. All right. Any other final thoughts, notes before we go?
No. We kept you long enough, I think.
Okay. Awesome. Well, thanks everybody. This was as always, these sort of fun, unexpected contemplations arise. Our consideration of timekeeping in dwarf culture was my favorite part of today's episode. Thinking through what an early first age dwarf culture would be like. So many fun things, the kind of thing that I just never think about when I'm just reading the text myself. So thanks guys for joining me for this. Thanks everybody for listening, and I will say thanks for listening and Godspeed.